What's going on, everybody? I am more excited about this video and the continuing regularity of doing this than I've been about anything on my channel for a long time. See, we have a great community of card collectors, and so many of you participate in this channel. And that is really at the very beginning. That was one of my main goals, is that we had this hub where a bunch of us share ideas, not just me. And I'm so excited that we've got this format now where you guys can ask me questions, but then I can ask you questions, because I'll be honest, a lot of you have a lot of great ideas that are better than mine. And that is proven to me again this week when I asked the question of, what do you think is going to increase in value the most over the next 10 years, whether it be players, sets, eras, positions, whatever it may be. And the question got responses that I was like, that makes total sense. I had never thought of that. How did I never even think about that? Well, the reason I never thought about it is because a lot of you have really, really smart ideas. And again, this is a great place and a great way to share those. Now, speaking of our amazing card community, a couple weeks ago, I shared a video where some people sent me really nice gifts of different cards and things, and it really, really touched me. It really meant a lot to me. And this, just the other day, just a couple of days ago, I came home over the weekend and I had a large package in the mail, and I was like, I don't remember buying something. It was addressed to me, and I was like, what is that? I don't know what it is. And my wife's like, you bought something. You don't remember what you bought. I'm like, no, I didn't, I swear. Well, I opened it up inside, and one of my longtime subscribers, longtime commenters, Matthew, sent me a really, really nice letter. It was a 1.5-page letter about just the channel, about his card collecting, about his family, about parallels that we have in life. And it meant a ton to me that he took the time to write out a letter that long. Really, really, really touched me. And then inside it said, there's a gift, open it carefully. I don't know what it's gonna be. And I opened it up and it blew my mind. Check this out. How amazing is that? It's a Gale Sayers handprint signed. Gale Sayers handprint and numbered. And you guys know Gale Sayers is my guy. For vintage football players, it's Gale Sayers. It gave me the chills yesterday. Literally, it's giving me the chills right now. It's giving me goosebumps how cool this is. And needless to say, thank you, Matthew. The fact that any of you guys would consider giving me anything, whether it be a letter or a card or a few cards or an amazing thing from Gale Sayers, means so much. It really does. That's the card community. With that said, let's take a look at the responses that you all came up with to my question about what's going to go up in value the most over the next 10 years. There were some really good answers. I'm going to share the responses, and then I'm going to give you my take on those responses. Let's check out the first response right here. All right, so this is number 1 of the 5 responses we'll be covering. So this one comes from Return to Collecting. It's a newer channel. I encourage you to check it out. More about that in a second. So I think the all-time great vintage picture cards will go up in value the most.
I think there are a lot of undervalued pitchers out there. Guys like Lefty Grove, Warren Spahn, Steve Carlton, and Whitey Ford are all undervalued. Now, I agree, but he goes on and he has a couple other additional points to make. So he goes on to say two specific pitchers that I think are the most undervalued and underappreciated are Jim Palmer and Bob Feller. I could see some more appreciated pitchers like Koufax, Seaver, Gibson increase in value as well. I think these are some terrific choices, and I think that things with pitching compared to hitting are a little bit out of whack.
Now, it's amazing to me how in sync some of you are with me. I literally was in the process because Darren, now if you haven't checked out Darren's channel, his channel is really cool because a lot of what he does is share his collection, share his new pickups, go through the top 50 cards of all time in his opinion. And his collection is amazing. If you have time, check out his channel, check out his pickups from this year's National. Unbelievable. I'll put the name of his channel. It's Return to Collecting. I'll put it down in the description below. Check out his pickups from the National. I was like, those are all cards I really, really would love to have. And he's a great guy. But how, of course, yeah, I totally agree. He responded to this like right away, and I immediately responded to him. I said, you're really going to love my video from Friday, the one that posted last Friday, where I literally was in the middle at that time of putting together a video about how pitchers are so undervalued, especially, in my opinion, that golden age, the late 40s to early 60s. I mean, Marichel's rookie card is about $100 in a mid to low grade. Same with Drysdale. I mean, Warren Spahn's rookie card you can get for, a couple $100s. Whitey Ford's rookie card is from that 51 Bowman set, the one that has Mantle's rookie and Mays' rookie, but it is like a tenth the price. I totally agree that I think pitchers will start to be more appreciated. If not anything, just think about the fact that as we get priced out on some of the baseball players, but you want to be collecting from that era, why not collect one of the couple of most dominant pitchers from that era? The only one that's really priced close to where it should be is Sandy Koufax. Sandy Koufax in a 1, is still kind of affordable, but as soon as you get to like a 2 or a 3, it's at $1,000 or so. Gibson is way less than that. It's really interesting to me how affordable the pitchers are. So I completely agree. I think that's a great point. Let's look at our second response right here.
All right, so number 2 of the 5 responses that I'm featuring comes from a longtime commenter and subscriber of the channel, HogFan6494. And I think he's got a lot of great things to say as well. Now, obviously, we can't read that, but I liked to show you the whole thing. So let's take a closer look at a highlight of his comment. So he says, I think in 10 years, all second-year Hall of Fame cards will be worth a whole lot more and will carry more weight in the card community. Examples are the 1955 Topps Hank Aaron and the 1955 Topps Ernie Banks. I think most of us cannot afford the 54 Topps Hank Aaron or the 54 Topps Banks rookie cards, but we could probably afford the next best thing. So to his point, if we look at the 1954 Hank Aaron rookie card in a 4, it's sold recently for $4,102. And that's a ton of money. And it's a really important card. It's one of the more desired cards by a lot of us. You know, he is an all-time great. But if we look at his second year card, so the 1955 Topps, in the same grade, it recently sold for $520. So we go from $4,102 for the rookie card. It drops over $3,500 down to his second year card, to the 1955 Topps. That's a huge drop. I mean, the value of the second year card is about 12 or 13% of the value of the rookie card. 12 or 13% of the rookie card. That is a huge drop. The affordability is off the charts. Now let's look at the other one he mentions, which is the 54 Topps Ernie Banks, which recently sold in a 4 as well for $1,250. You know I love that card. It's an awesome looking card. He's an all-time great hitter. He's an all-time great guy. And then his 55 Topps in the same grade sold for $153.50. So it's an $1,100 drop from his rookie card to his second year card. That is staggering. Again, it's a 12 or 13% about of the cost of the rookie card. So we're talking about some huge drops in prices from the rookie card to the second year card. And that's just 2 examples. But they do seem kind of extreme. And should they be that extreme? Well, that's the question.
Another awesome answer. Rookie cards have this mystique about them. No doubt about it. There's no doubt about it that the first card, the rookie card, is the grail card for that player. But as we just saw with the Hank Aaron example and the Ernie Banks example, the drop in price is so much. And it doesn't just stop there. It doesn't just stop with those 2 examples, and they're great examples. I mean, look at even Bob Gibson, who I just mentioned was underpriced. From a Bob Gibson rookie to a Bob Gibson second year, the 1960 card, huge drop. You look at hitters like Eddie Matthews, who pretty much all of his cards are underappreciated in my opinion. His rookie card is a high number from the 52 Topps set. And it's the last card in the 52 Topps set. So it's a really tough card and it's really, really expensive. But then you look at his second year card, the 53 Topps, and it's a gorgeous card. And it was just featured on my deals of the month of the 1950s under $50 in a pretty nice looking card of Eddie Matthews. Second card was under $50 and it was a PSA 2 or 3. There's a huge drop in price from the rookie cards to the second year cards. Huge. And some of them, it's like an 80 or 90% drop. And some of them, it's like a 60% drop. But it's kind of amazing to me that you can get the second year card for as cheap as you can. Now, really early in my channel, like really early, back in like December of last year, I did a video about how I think rookie cards might be overrated. And the reason I said they might be overrated, it's not that they're not cool. It's just, should they be that much more expensive than the second year card? Should they be 7 or 8 times more expensive than the second year card? That seems extreme to me. I think this is a great point. And I think if you're a collector of a player and you're feeling priced out of some of the all-time great rookie cards, join the club. I'm priced out too. But the second best thing, as he just mentioned, the second best thing is the second year card. So maybe that's the card to target. Maybe that's the one to just get a deal on instead of breaking the bank and taking your entire hobby budget for a couple of years and putting it into one card. I don't know. But I do think more and more people are going to start being attracted to that second year card. I think it's an excellent point. All right, two great ones. Let's look at the third right now.
All right, so featured response number 3 is a really, really interesting one. He basically says that the high grade cards in the 71 and 75 sets have the most upside, the most potential for increase over the next 10 years. And there are really a couple of reasons that he talks about as to why those two particular sets. And I think that both reasons are pretty good. First, my reasoning is because of the difficulty to find these cards in high grades because of chipping and centering. Also, there are many high-quality Hall of Famers for these sets. For us collectors that are now in our 50s, so the age of the collector is going to increase the demand for these sets in addition to the difficulty of the set.
This is a great point. And anybody who has submitted cards to PSA over the last year, and to a certain extent SGC, but especially to PSA, knows that the grades people are getting are really tough. They've definitely changed things, whether they want to admit it or not. And they've kind of admitted a little bit of changing. They're using some computer software to assist in the grading. And it's made a difference. I mean, I was at a card show this weekend, and I had a couple of pickups, which you're going to see soon in my card show review video, of a massive 350 table show. And I picked up some cards that to me look undergraded by at least a couple of grades. So if they're grading tougher, just think, will we ever have PSA 9s and 10s from the 71 top set or the 75 top set? And I think you could also throw the 63 top set into that same group. Those three sets are brutal. So there's going to be demand for them. And the supply of 8s and 9s and even 7s. I mean, I saw a card yesterday, a 71 Hank Aaron. And I can't remember off the top of my head now if it was a 5 or a 6. I think it was a 6. It looked like a 9 to me. I mean, it looked like borderline perfect. So if they're grading that tough, there's probably not going to be much growth in 8s or 9s. So if people are interested in 8s or 9s and want high grade sets, the supply is not going to really grow. Now, additionally to his point, which is a great point, is there are a lot of people. Now, we look at the 70s. We look at 1971 and 1975. And that was right about 50 years ago. So a lot of collectors, a lot of people out there who are in their late 50s and early 60s, and they're starting to actually have some money. Their kids are out of the house. They're starting to be able to have their own hobbies again. And they want the nostalgia of their childhood and collecting cards. And they want to collect the heroes from when they were 8, 9, 10. And they want their rookie cards. They want the George Bretts. They want the Robin Younts. They want the Burt Blylevens. They want the Thurman Munsons. They want the Reggie Jacksons. And the cards in those sets are early in their career or the rookies of their career. And they want those cards, but they want a nice one. And there aren't a lot of them. And based on the grading standards being changed, I don't see the growth of high grade cards happening anytime soon. So it's safe to say that there's probably going to be an increase in demand for the cards from the early 70s to middle 70s because people are getting to the age where they have time and money to collect the players and cards from their childhood. And at the same time, the supply is not really going up because the grading standards have gotten tougher. So that's going to put a squeeze on those sets. I think that's a really, really good point. I mean, so far, I've had 3 outstanding responses, outstanding thoughts. Let's look at the 4th.
All right, so number 4 on the featured list might be my favorite comment out of all 5. I think it makes so much sense. And I mean, they all make sense, but this one just completely was off my radar personally. I think the cards that will increase the most are the all-time favorite foreign players. So the international guys. If Fanatics achieves their plan of increasing the overall sports card market tenfold, it will have to spread worldwide. I think this makes so much sense. So then you think, well, who are some of the international greats? Well, recently, when you think of baseball, you think of Ichiro. Ichiro is like a rock star in Japan, which makes total sense. But it's not just baseball. It's not just Japan. I mean, if you go to Germany, Dirk Nowitzki is like amazing. Like he is just so admired and looked up to. So yeah, if cards go international and Fanatics grows internationally, the hobby, then I think that Germans would go after Dirk Nowitzki. And then if you look back at vintage, like you have like Sadahara O, right? The guy had over 850 career professional home runs. So his cards are actually already somewhat pricey, some of the high-end ones. But yeah, those could go nuts because he's their Babe Ruth, which makes sense.
Now, I love the thought process here. I love it. Now, I got a lot of great responses. I got a lot of responses that I wouldn't have come up with for sure. But this one might be the one that really surprised me the most that I hadn't even considered. It's such a great thought. So let's walk through this together. Fanatics buys out Topps. Fanatics says there's basically been no marketing in sports cards like almost ever. Very, very little marketing. Fanatics says we want to 10x the hobby. We want to grow the hobby 10 times what it is now. Now, if Fanatics is going to do that, they're going to have to expand internationally. Most of the card collecting, sports card collecting that's happening, the overwhelming majority is in the United States. There's obviously some in Japan. PSA recently opened, another grading facility out there. And there's a little bit in Europe. But if Fanatics is going to 10x the hobby, they're going to have to go internationally. So, if they're going to go internationally, they're probably going to go to Europe, to China, and expand Japan and Asia. right? So it's probably going to be Europe and Asia that they're going to target the most first. That's my guess. If they're going to do that, if suddenly there are going to be a bunch of marketing plans in China to get people interested in collecting cards, in China, their biggest sports hero is Yao Ming. I mean, that guy is a rock star. Well, they would all want Yao Ming cards. So if China says sports card collecting is cool, we want Yao Ming, right? Japan, if Japan really gets hit with marketing, they're going to say, we want Ichiro, right? They're going to say, we want Sadahara O. They're going to say, and then the current guys. There are some current players, obviously, right? Some big ones right now as well. Germany, their big hero is Dirk Nowitzki, right? You can go country by country. And a lot of people have said, well, I think soccer cards are gonna explode, because then you're really even bringing in a huge chunk in South America, which are huge in soccer. If Fanatics really starts to attack Canada with marketing, then it would really grow hockey cards, right? Because hockey is huge up there. I think this is a really good point. Now, is this going to happen overnight? No, this is not something that in 3 months we'll look back and go, oh, way up. No, it's not going to happen like that. It's going to be a slow process. And it also depends on Fanatics. It also depends on where Fanatics is going to target the most and first. So yeah, I think that's a great point. If we suddenly add lots of collectors of sports cards internationally, they are going to go and target the players who are the sport heroes from their country first. I think that's really smart. 4 great answers. Let's look at the 5th.
All right, so response number 5, I think, is a really good one. Now, this one is a little bit longer, as you can see, and so I highlight a few portions of it for you that I think are the most notable parts of the response, although it is a really well-written response and explanation, which is part of the reason why I chose it and part of the reason why I feature so many portions to it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first part of it. My response would be vintage football Hall of Famers from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Now, I think that makes total sense. I think I've talked about this a little bit in the past. He goes on to give the 3 reasons why he thinks that those will go up. First, as you actually mentioned in a previous video, vintage football cards in general are at a pretty low price point right now, relatively speaking, which means there's a lot of room for growth. I completely agree that they are at a pretty low price point. Some of the all-time greats you can buy their second, third cards for very, very little. And when they're very low, that provides a lot of upside potential. The second point he makes is that there is a lot of scarcity when it comes to football cards from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Just like with other sports, the further back you go, the more scarce they are. But particularly in fairly decent grades, and particularly in football, football was not as widely collected as baseball cards, and they were not as widely held on to as baseball cards. So the population is quite a bit lower. The third point is that football is the most popular sport in America right now, and eventually football collectors are going to start working their way backwards, meaning they're collecting cards of the current players now, but then we'll eventually start to go to the older players, like many baseball collectors have done, as we started with the eras in which we collected or grew up, and then we tend to want to go to the cards that are older than that. Another person jumps in and says Vintage Football Hall of Fame rookies. So I had to include that because it's in the same line of thinking. And again, I agree, but I had to include both of the comments there.
All right. I like this one. Now, I've mentioned a few times, I've talked a little bit on my channel about football cards and how I think they have a lot of room for growth. And I got a little bit of heat for it. I have some people that were like, no, you're crazy. It's baseball. It's always going to be baseball. And again, I continue to say baseball and the nostalgia and the history of baseball will always be king. But with football now being the most watched sport in the country, with football collecting with younger people being off the charts, with the popularity of football, I think that a lot of the current collectors are football, as is mentioned in the comment. And then on top of that, we have what we all kind of do, whether we want to admit it or not. I mean, most of us that are collecting, most of us, we started collecting in the 60s, 70s, or 80s. But we're all buying cards. Well, not all of us, but a lot of us are buying cards from the 50s. And then we go, what about pre-war? And then what about turn of the century? And what we all tend to do is our entry point tends to be the players and the cards that we collected as kids. And then a lot of us go back more and more and more and more and more to the history of the game and older. I don't know why it would be any different with football cards. I don't know why it would be any different with the current collectors. And I know we say, well, this is a different era. They don't care about history. And to a certain extent, that's not a newsflash to me. I'm a high school teacher. I see the next generation every single day, lots of them. And I get that. But at the end of the day, I think it's kind of natural to slowly move back and go older, older, older. So I totally agree that the early vintage football cards have a lot of room for growth. I think that's a great choice. So I really enjoyed this. I hope that comes across to you how much I enjoyed reading all of your responses. And there were some awesome ones, not just the 5 that I mentioned, but there were some really good ones. It was tough to narrow it down to 5. And I look forward to doing this each week. So now, what's the question for next week? I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this coming week's question. So let's take a look at it right here.
So this is the data from August 2023 of the grading of the 4 major grading companies. PSA in August did 1.23 million grades. SGC at 118,000. CGC is 106,000, and then Beckett at about 75,000. Now, when we look at the categories, here's something important about PSA. 570,000 cards per month that they're grading are TCG cards. So we're talking about like Pokemon and stuff. So to me, that's important. So after looking at the current status of the card grading market, and knowing that PSA cards that are graded generally, especially in the higher grades, tend to sell more than cards in the same grade with other companies, my question is, what do we think is going to happen moving forward? do we think things are still going to stay where PSA is 10 times as many grading as SGC? Do we think the status of the card grading market is going to be the same in 5 years as it is now? Or do we think it's going to change? And if we think it's going to change, the question is, how will it change? Who will be the top company in 5 years? Will it still be PSA? Will SGC catch them? Because right now, PSA is doing about 10 times as much as PSA. But SGC isn't doing half of their grading as TCG cards. Who will be the top 3 companies? So out of those 4, will it still be the same top 3 or will it change? Now, the reason this matters is because it could affect which cards you should be buying right now. If you think that, SGC is going to be number 1, that might affect whether you're buying SGC cards or PSA cards. And ultimately, will PSA cards continue to sell more than the other ones? Let me know what you think. I really enjoyed this episode and I really enjoyed hearing all of your thoughts.